Hi, this is Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to talk about anchor players. All right. So I've been thinking a lot about Dungeons and Dragons players, right? So recently my Sunday game folded, and what happened was I lost 2 anchor players, and I'll explain what anchor players are. And I had 3 players left, and I actually could have taken the 3 players I had left, and I could have swept in additional players. I already had people who were asking to be in the game, right? So I easily could have stood up a game with 2 to 4 to even 5 players, right? But I chose not to. I was like, let this fold, right? Let this table fold. Let it wrap, right? And then I get a fresh start, right? And I think there's a lot of benefits to a fresh start, and also time of year, right? Like, so I actually have 2 conventions coming up. I actually need time to prep for those conventions, for the one-shots I'm going to be running at them. Well, I'm planning on running one-shots at PhilCon, and I'm planning on running one-shots at PAX Unplugged, right? So basically, I think that's it. That's exactly what, it really made a lot of sense to just let this fold. But the reality is, the more I thought about it, I was like, well, why didn't I just, play with the 2 players, with the 3 players I had, and then pull in at least one 4th player. I had somebody who I had asked to be in the game, and actively left them off the list. And the reason why is I knew adding this other player would make the game worse for at least one other player that was already at the table, right? So the answer is anchor player. I lost 2 anchor players. I lost my narrative player and I lost my mechanical player. I had an attending player, I had a shenanigans player, and I had a dedicated player. Okay. Now the reality. So why were the attending player, the shenanigans player, and the dedicated player not enough? Why couldn't I have just run with them? Right. Well, here's the reason. One, the dedicated player is a very interesting guy. He really is an interesting guy. He loves Dungeons & Dragons. He loves dungeon mastering Dungeons & Dragons. And he loves playing Dungeons & Dragons, right? And I had run an online game in the Great Pandy when I had to. And we had run a complete campaign arc. Then I invited him back for another online game during Great Pandy. As soon as the lockdowns were over, I ended all online games, right? And then I started up a physical game, and the dedicated player, literally, as soon as he heard it was up, he was like, can I play it? I was like, absolutely, you're welcome. Come on in. All right, so I brought him in, right? Now, the dedicated player is really fascinating. The dedicated player has everything necessary to be an anchor player and chooses not to, right? I think one of the things about being an anchor player is that you have to be willing to be an anchor player. I think that's key. I think you have to know you're an anchor player, and actually, different people would have to. You could just know you're a catalyst. You're one of the prime players in the game. You don't need to have in your head, I'm an anchor player, because anchor, I don't think anybody's ever used this term before. So I think I'm coining it. If I'm not, let me know. But there are definitely anchor players, and I'm going to explain what an anchor player is. All right, so my dedicated player absolutely could be an anchor player. He chooses not to be, so he couldn't serve in the game as an anchor player. There were 2 other people at the table. The attending player, I think that name tells you what they do. They simply attend. That's about all they bring to the table. The shenanigan player, actually, I think he could be a brilliant dungeon master and a brilliant player, but he is there for the lulz, right? Which really kind of makes him suck. I have to say, at the end of the day, I think he has everything necessary to be an anchor player and to be a tier 1 dungeon master, but because he's like, oh, I'm going to do this for the lulz, he stops himself from reaching tier 1 play as a dragon player, and he just certainly can't really be a tier 1 dungeon master. If fun is your main goal, you're always going to suck at Dungeons and Dragons, in my humble opinion, right? All right, so those 2 players weren't going to be my anchor players. So I lost these 2 anchor players, and I'm like, I'm not running without an anchor player. So let's define now what an anchor player is. Okay, so what is an anchor player? It's a really fascinating question. So an anchor player is someone that other people at the table want to be at the table because that person is there. Period. That this person is more than just a strong build player. They are a person who understands narrative, understands sharing spotlight, has the absolute core bare minimum to be a tremendous dragon player or dungeon master. What is that? Charismatic, confident, and intelligent. Right? There are people who end up at Dungeons and Dragons tables that are not charismatic, are not confident, or are not intelligent, and they're never really going to reach the full experience of Dungeons and Dragons, and they certainly cannot be an anchor player, right? And so basically, I think, and that's, so you have to be charismatic, confident, and intelligent. And actually, that is a filter, right? If you are charismatic, confident, and intelligent, generally people are going to want to sit at any table with you, whether Dungeons and Dragons is happening or not, right? So first of all, these are winsome people that other people want to spend time with. Now, I've been thinking a lot about this, like, what makes a winsome person, right? And so I'm going to explain it. I think this is the key to a winsome person. A winsome person has an awareness that every conversation they ever have, they have a duty as a human being to make that conversation enjoyable for the other person on the other end of the conversation, right? They have to genuinely listen. They have to genuinely care. And when they talk, they need to say things that another human being actually wants to hear, right? Now, the ramifications of what I just said are massive, right? So let me give you an example between an anchor player and a non-anchor player, all right? Hey, Sally, anchor player, how was your week? Oh, rough week. Had some challenges. How was your week? Right? That's an anchor player, right? Here's a non-anchor player. Hey, Sarah, how was your week? Oh my gosh, my cat's bowel was distended, and I had to go to the veterinarian, right? And it made me sad, and I missed a whole bunch of work, and it was the last thing that happened, and this is the last straw with my cat, and a terrible thing happened, and my partner left me because I've been investing so much time and emotion into this cat. Now, let me tell you about this breakup. That's a non-anchor player, right? It's very simple, right? And unfortunately, some things have to do with Dungeons & Dragons, but some things impact Dungeons & Dragons that here's the issue. No one wants to hear your woes. I think that is the key to a winsome person, is a person who just understands. No one wants to hear your woes, right? And people who don't understand that and think that entering into a conversation is an opportunity for them to unload, not winsome, never going to be an anchor player, right? People who carry their burdens on their own shoulders and do not bother others with them are winsome people and have the ability to be anchor players if they're charismatic, confident, and intelligent, right? And so that's the issue. Is my two anchor players, they were just, you could always have a good conversation with them because they understood that there are people who just fundamentally do not understand the function of conversation. Many people think this is an opportunity for me to dump my emotional woes on somebody else, and it makes them unwinsome, and because they're unwinsome, it makes them completely incapable of ever being an anchor player. Period. Nobody, and that's the issue, is if you are not winsome, nobody wants to sit at a table with you. Any table. Doesn't matter if it's Dungeons & Dragons or not, right? So in order to be an anchor player, you must be winsome, and then in addition to that, you must be charismatic, confident, and intelligent. So that was this was a journey for me, because I really feel I needed to understand why I didn't continue with available players. And the reality is, here's the kicker: I have no intention of ever running without a single anchor player. Right? I'm not, and I know dungeon masters who do it. Right? Like They go and they just collect up a whole bunch of unwinsome people who need something to do with their Sunday night, right? And then they run. I ain't that person. I ain't, right? And the reality, so that's the reality of it, right? And it was a journey for me to learn this, right? All that is my humble opinion. It is my humble opinion that as a dungeon master, if you don't have an anchor player left, fold that game. Fold that game, right? I'm eager to hear your humble opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.